saw the article, one that said, I think you were married in 92 and then divorced in 94. And the story is she wanted to have kids. You didn't want to have kids.
Right.
And you've never had kids.
Right.
Why a man with your kind of values, your passion for America, your conservative values, why didn't you have kids?
At the time, I didn't want them. One of my regrets in life is that I should have. Now I'm 71 and think it's too late. But at the time, I didn't. I mean, I was 25 years old at one time. I'm not that age anymore. And when I was younger, I think what happened is when I was younger, I really intensely disliked my father.
Hey guys, so I came across this clip from Valuetainment's YouTube channel, their Clips channel, and they were interviewing Larry Elder. Now, for those who haven't seen it, I did my critique of Larry Elder's interview with The Breakfast Club. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a 3-parter. But in this short clip, Larry Elder is discussing why he chose not to be a father at 25. And now he's 71 and he regrets not being a father, not being a grandfather. So he has his reasons as to why, and he goes into it in detail here. And this is the first time I learned about this. Apparently he's talked about it before and he has a book about it, or at least in the book there's a section where he talks about it. But here he goes into some detail as to why he chose not to be a father at the time, and now he regrets it. And I thought it was actually a pretty powerful statement that he made during this time. So I thought I would just share it. I'm not going to give my 2 cents until at the end, because I feel like this is something that should be heard in its entirety uninterrupted. But before we begin, please take the time to like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to hit that 100 subscriber count. We're almost there, guys. Please hit the notification bell to get notified of future videos, timestamps, and a link to the full interview below in the description. And with that, let's begin.
I've written a book about it called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. My father used to spank us really hard with a belt. My brothers and I both disliked him. And now I'm 25 years old, and I sat down and had a conversation with my dad, not having really spoken to him for almost 10 years. And I told him how much I disliked him when I was growing up, how mean I thought he was, how angry I thought he was for silly reasons. And my dad and I had a conversation I thought was going to last for 5 or 10 minutes. It ended up lasting for 8 hours.
Wow.
And during that 8-hour conversation, I found out that my father never knew his biological father. My last name, Elder, is not the name of his biological father. And I said, I'm 25 years old now. I said, well, Dad, who was your father? He says, I have no idea. You never met your dad? No. Who's Elder? Elder was the name of a guy who was in my life the longest. He was an alcoholic who used to beat up my mother, and when I tried to stop him, he'd beat me up. My dad said, then I came home at the age of 13, and I started quarreling with my mom's then boyfriend. Elder was long gone. And the mother sided with the boyfriend and threw my father out of the house, never to return. 13-year-old black boy, Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South at the beginning of the Great Depression. For the next 8 hours, my dad just told me about his life. He became a Pullman porter on the trains. That's how he ended up in California. This is before the war, before the Second World War. My dad was blown away. You could walk through the front door of a restaurant in California, in LA, and get served. He always had crackers and tin cans of tuna because he never knew in the South if he'd be able to get a meal. So my dad made a mental note, maybe someday I'll relocate to California. Pearl Harbor, my dad joined the Marines. I asked him why. If there are any Marines out there, you know I'm going to say 2 reasons. They go where the action is, and my dad said, I love the uniforms. So he's stationed on Guam, and when the war is over, he goes to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he met and married my mom to get him a job as a cook. My dad was in charge of cooking for the colored soldiers. And he was told, we don't hire niggers. He goes to an unemployment office. Lady says, you went to the wrong door. My dad goes out and sees colored only. Goes to that door to the very same lady who sent him out. My dad came with my mom and said, this is BS. I'm going to LA, get me a job as a cook, and I'll send for you. So he goes to LA. He walks around and he's told, you don't have any references. My dad said, I need references to make ham and eggs. And my dad offered to work for free for a reference. They wouldn't even do that. So they treated him the same way in LA as they did in Chattanooga, maybe a little more polite. He goes to an unemployment office, this time just one door. Lady says, I have nothing. My dad says, what time do you open? She says, 9. What time do you close? She says, 5. My dad said, I'll be sitting in that chair. Do you have something? My dad sat in a chair for a whole day, came back the next day, sat there for half a day. She calls him up. I have something. I don't know if you're going to want it. My dad said, of course I'm going to want it. I'm starting a family. What is it? And she said, it's a job cleaning toilets at Nabisco brand bread. My dad did that for over 10 years, took a second full-time job cleaning at another bread company, cleaning toilets, cooked for a family on the weekend because he wanted my mom to be a stay-at-home mom. And he went to night school to get his GED. And then when he got his GED, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. The man never slept. Wow. 5 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, half hour here. Not day after day, not week after week, not month after month, but year after year, which was why he was so grouchy. So as my dad is telling me this, my dad's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And now I'm crying. And I apologized to my father for having such a harsh view towards him. And he said, there's nothing to apologize for. You just didn't know. My father said, just follow the advice I've always given you and your brothers. Hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. Larry, you cannot control the outcome, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you moan or groan about what someone did to you or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and say to yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, my dad said this, no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad things are going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I was 25 years old when I had that conversation with him. For the next 35 years, he and I were the best of friends. I wrote a book called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours, about that 8-hour conversation. And it's changed people's lives. I get letters all over the world from people telling me that it changed that. So ingrained in me was I never wanted to have a child that felt the way I felt about my dad. And it was just in me. And it took a while for that to go away. By the way, my brothers both married women who had kids. And they both wanted to have kids. And I had the opposite reaction to my dad, as my brothers did. Let me tell you something real quickly about my mom. My mom was born on a farm in Huntsville, Alabama. And my mom was a lifelong Democrat. My dad was a lifelong Republican. And you should have been a fly on the wall to hear some of the arguments. But nobody called anybody a fascist. Nobody called anybody a Nazi. Nobody said you only care about the rich, you don't care about the poor. They were able to argue aggressively, passionately, but nobody demeaned anybody. And why we can't do that in this country, to me, is a real problem. And when I become president, I think I'm going to be able to change the tone of America so we can have discussions like this, like we're having here, civilly, without anybody calling anybody a fascist or a Nazi. My mother told my brothers and me, nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission. And so one day I'm in high school and I'm taking a course called African American Studies. If you know me, you never heard me use the term African American to describe myself. I don't. I'm an American who's black. I don't like the term African American. The name of the course was African American Studies, so I'm just telling you what the name of the course was. So we read a poem by a guy named County Cullen. And it goes like this. While riding through old Baltimore so small and full of glee, I saw a young Baltimorean keep a looking straight at me. Now, I was young and very small, and he was no whit bigger, and so I smiled, but he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until September. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. Teacher was pissed. My class was all black. She talked about how this was going to make the kid always feel inferior. He was going to always have a permanent stain in his psyche. He'll never feel part of the American family. She was pissed. The class was pissed. I was pissed. So I'm walking home. And I knew my mom was going to have a different reaction to the poem, although I didn't know what it was going to be. So I walk into the house, and she's frying chicken wings, my favorite, and stirring a big pot of greens on the stove. I said, Mom, we read a poem in class. I want to get your reaction to it. She said, what is it? I said, it goes like this. While riding through old Baltimore so small and full of glee, I saw a young Baltimorean keep looking straight at me. Now, I was young and very small, and he was no whit bigger, and so I smiled. But he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until September. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. My mom took the spoon out of the pot, hit it on the side, and said, Larry, what a darn shame he allowed something like that to spoil his vacation. How many wings do you want? And that's
God, and your mom's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Wow.
But she was a Kennedy type Democrat. My mom, by the way, because of me, began voting Republican. She voted for George W. Bush twice. And her position was the Democratic Party left me. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. She never changed her registration. My mom was a pro-gun person, Second Amendment person. She grew up with guns. She was pro-life. My dad was pro-life. My mom, strong national security. And she thought Democrats just became just crazy. So I think that's how Robert Kennedy feels, I think, about his party as well right now, Robert Kennedy Jr.
Larry, you just went straight to Robert Kennedy, but man, what you just said the last 5-10 minutes now explains. There's a lot of men that, and I'd be curious to know what you would say to this. You said you're 70 or 71?
71.
Okay, so you're April 27th. When's your birthday?
That's right.
April 27th. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're 71.
Of course.
You haven't had kids. You wish you would have had kids, and I respect you for saying it now because that's where wisdom. We can borrow wisdom from somebody like you who's got a few decades on us. What do you say to men who are in their 20s, late 20s, career guys, or 30s or 40s who are like, you know what? I also don't want to have kids. I also don't want to have kids because there's too much responsibility. I didn't have a good father figure. I didn't have a good relationship with them. What do you say to them?
You're going to regret it. That's what I'd say to them. I have friends now, peers, who have kids and they've got grandkids. And I've never seen a man more joyful than when he's with his grandkids. And I don't have grandkids. I don't have kids. I think you're missing out.
What about women?
However, it isn't for everybody. My girlfriend never wanted to have kids. When I first met her, I thought she was saying it because she thought that's what I wanted her to say. One of my close friends is Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager has often argued that you are not a fully developed human being until you've had kids, until you've had that experience. And I've been on the same station with Dennis Prager for years. And every year he'd have his dad come in from New York and his dad would talk about various things. And one time Dennis gets up to use the restroom. This is during a break. And Mr. Prager is there with me, Dennis's dad. And I said, Mr. Prager, Dennis says that if you don't have kids, you're not fully formed as an adult. Because it always bothered me since I didn't have kids. And Mr. Prager said, I don't feel that way at all. I feel that you can just observe other people and have your own life experiences from other people. There's no reason why you have to have kids if you don't want to have kids. It's ridiculous to say that you would not be a fully so I told Dennis later on when his dad left what his dad said.
So he explained it. And to me, look, I'm not a father myself. I'm in my early 40s and I want to be a father. Hopefully, God willing, that'll happen. Now, fatherhood isn't for everyone, but I would say that most men want to be fathers. And there's a joy, amongst other things, there's a joy that comes with being a father and being a responsible father, of course. And I would say to people who are younger, in their 20s, for example, that yes, things might be, you're trying to figure things out in life and you're not really sure about yourself. And yeah, and I totally agree with that. I always say that there's, different aspects of life you have to focus on in your 20s and maybe into your 30s as well. Whether it's spiritual, getting right with the triune God, financial, getting your money right, educational. It doesn't have to be in college, but just doing something, learning something through experience or education, formal education, or just traveling and getting experience, overseas. Your social club, who you hang out with. Are people who you hang out with, are they people that add value to your life, or are they people who hold you back? So those type of things, I understand people who are in their 20s, men particularly in their 20s, and they're trying to narrow those things down and work on those things. Also, physicality, if you're overweight, if you want to get thin, slim, look nice, or if you're underweight, eat more, eat healthier, and, go to the gym and lift weights to get a little bigger. There are various things you have to work on in your 20s and in your 30s to be the best man you can be. Now, again, you don't have to necessarily be a father to be a man, to necessarily be looked at as a man. Biblically, Paul wasn't married. He didn't have any kids, but he's revered by many, and, if you look at the Bible, the Pauline chapters, he talks about, how devoted he is to Christ, so, you don't need necessarily to be a father to be a man, but I do see value in being a father and fatherhood, and many men want to be father, and of course it takes the right woman to find, to wed and bed with, so there's that. Keep that in mind. But overall, I thought this explanation from Larry Elder was touching. It was very touching. And again, it just shows not only his feelings towards his father, and all that resentment just going away, and him and his father being close friends, which is great. It also shows that Larry Elder's grandfather, and that his own father, they had their own challenges, and they were able to overcome those things. Larry Elder's surname, is it really, his real surname? His grandfather didn't know his father, and just took a name of a guy who knew. So, there's a lot of challenges that Larry Elder's father, and Larry Elder's grandfather went through, but they were able to overcome those things. And people like Charlemagne and the rest of the Breakfast Club, they don't want to hear that. They keep talking about the system, which is ridiculous. But I thought that this was very touching and telling. And I think this is something that many, no matter what demographic you come from, whatever age you come from, it doesn't matter. This is for men to hear. And maybe something Larry Elder said here, maybe it's something that someone else who's listening to this is experiencing right now, and he's trying to work that out with his own father. And I always say, at least with me personally, my father and I, we haven't always had a great relationship. We never saw eye to eye, but I can say today that him and I are good, because we worked out a lot of things. And you don't want to end up where your father passes and you didn't get to have that conversation like Larry Elder had with his dad, or that I had with my own dad. So I just wanted to post this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's illuminating to you. I don't think Larry Elder is going to win the presidency, but he got me with this one. I was like, wow, okay, I didn't know about that about him, and that was cool. That was cool for him to share. I think it was very touching for him to talk about this, and he got me with this one. So thank you, Larry Elder. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, to get notified of future videos. And until the next one, take care.